Paul wrote this letter while he was in prison in Rome. So I want to pause there for just a moment. Like, I want to think about if we were in prison, because he was in prison for sharing the gospel. It wasn't like he did anything wrong. Of course, it was against the leaders didn't want that, but in God's view, it was not anything wrong. So here he is in prison for the multiple time. I don't even remember how many times he was put in prison for spreading the gospel, for doing God's work. He's in prison. And what does he do with his time? He's writing a letter to a church, to the church, for instruction. And those are the like some of the other letters: instruction, encouragement, teaching. That's what he's doing with his time. I wonder, what would I be doing if I was sitting in prison for doing the work of the Lord? Like, if tomorrow someone knocked on my door and said, "We don't like all that stuff you post. You post way too much about the Lord. You're going to jail." What would my attitude be? I would love to say, "Oh, I know I would be like Paul. I would continue the good fight." And I hope and I pray that I would be. But I wonder, would there be moments of doubt and insecurity and fear and sadness? Would there be moments of just loneliness and isolation? Would there ever be moments where I would just say, "Oh Lord, I don't know. I don't know if I can do this." Something to think about. Where where is our loyalty, and is there a place where it ever runs out? Are we, I know we say it, but are we really willing to do anything for the cause of Christ? Are we completely 100% sold out to him? Sold out to the point of, if they put us in prison, we're still going to preach the good news. If they kill us in the face of death, we're still going to say, "I will not be moved." Now, in America, we don't have that quite yet. There's other places in the country that do. Here, it's not like that. And I say yet because I believe there's coming a time when it will be like that. Don't know when. But I think we all need to be ready in our heart to know, are we going to stand for Jesus? Are we going to stand for the truth? Are we going to stand for the gospel? So many times now we consider attacks and difficulties when people laugh at us. We get laughed at and we can't stand through that. Like, we go to work and we don't want to stand out. We don't want to be different. So we laugh at jokes we know we shouldn't. We say things we know we shouldn't because we don't want to stand out, because we consider that an attack, to be laughed at, to be ridiculed, to be left out. That is nothing. And if we can't even stand for God in that type of atmosphere, how do we think we're ever going to stand for him when it puts our life on the line? And yet that's what we're called to. That's the life we're called to live. To say, even if I have to lay down my life, there's no going back. There's no turning back. Are we ready to be bold for him? I think that's something we need to each ask ourselves. What are we willing to do for the cause of Christ? What are we willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to be left out? Are you willing to be made fun of? Are you willing for people to not like you? Are you willing for people to make fun of you? Are you willing to put your life on the line? Are you willing to risk jail? What are we willing to risk? Are we really, really, really willing to go all in? Are we willing to live a life of obedience over a life of comfort? That's what we're called to. That's the life we're called to. Look at the life of Paul. If you don't believe me, that's okay. You don't have to. There's so many prosperity gospel out there that tells you that your life will be full of comfort, your life will be full of blessing, your life will be full of things, and it will just be this cushy, comfy living life. I don't know where they see that in the Bible. Look at the life of Paul. He wrote so many books of the Bible. He wrote the inspired word of God. And yet, for many times, it came from prison. It came from a place of brokenness. It came from a place of being physically beaten. It came from a place of being hated. Yeah, he had followers and he had people who loved him, but he had entire nations that wanted to kill him and hated him for the message he was sharing. Not all of us are going to stand against stuff like that, but are we willing to? Are we willing to do that?